Hey Josh, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, Elliot. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's recording on a Saturday. It's a whole new world for us, right?
Yeah, early morning, semi early morning. It's 9 a.m. And yeah, my brain should be a little sharper than normal.
Well, I won't commit to that promise, but yes, it is morning. So, yeah, excited to have a chat. So, I know you and I recently took a little bit of a trip and we went over to Camp Fi Rocky Mountain Week 1.5 and we took some different yeah
We have the t-shirts to prove it if anyone
yeah
is
right
watching on
yeah
YouTube.
but we took some different paths to get there. I know that I flew into Denver and we hung out in Golden for a little bit before meandering down to Colorado Springs where camp is at, but um you took a road trip in trusty red.
Yeah, a little red. I took the long way. I drove all the way out and continued the trip after Colorado. And we can talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this episode, we're gonna just kind of walk through what were our takeaways from the experience and how we felt. But I'll kick it over to you because I know you did some kind of I won't call it pre-work, but you did some work leading up to camp that I'm sure you wanted to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, I guess just some personal self-improvement work. I talked a little bit in the past on some of our conversations here, how I tend to be a little bit more on the introverted side and kind of struggle with getting kind of anxious and overwhelmed in group settings, and probably to the point where I tend to not speak up too much when it comes to like group discussions and things like that. So I took the opportunity to say, I want to get the most out of this experience, and what kind of tips could I learn to try to see if I could put myself out there more and just be more confident, more engaging, a better listener, a better speaker, all of the above. So I was spending some time listening to podcasts and reading some different articles, and actually went through and looked at the differences between an introvert, an extrovert, omnivert, ambivert, all of those kind of things to try to really figure out where I fit as far as like a personality makeup, I guess. And yeah, I had some really found some really good tips along the way, such as just being more engaging in conversation so that you can ask more questions. You've mentioned it before, where it's like we all have two ears and one mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. And not that I necessarily have ever had a problem with that, but it was good to continue to remind myself of that, and then just use that as an opportunity to listen, because a lot of people have no problem telling you all about themselves. And then if I could figure out a way to ask a follow-up question that was more engaging, I was really trying to practice that as much as I possibly could. And then a lot of it was just really making sure that I was taking the opportunity to introduce myself and meet people like in a one-on-one or maybe a two-on-one situation, as opposed to in the past kind of just relying on like maybe somebody coming up to me and those sort of things. So I don't think I got a chance to speak to everyone, but I certainly a pretty did meet and talk to a pretty significant portion of the group. Put myself out there in situations where I like had ate meals with different people and sat with different people in some of the events. But I also had to recharge quite a bit. I had to go back and be in our room and for some quiet time, went on a hike, did some things like that in smaller group settings. So yeah, all in all that to say, it was a really great experience. I definitely don't regret that. And I actually felt like I developed a bit of a habit in doing so. So much so that after I left camp, I continued on my road trip, and I found myself trying to use the same sort of habits and techniques with people that I was bumping into as I would go when on my road trip and I was going to hotels. And it was funny because in the campfire setting, most of the people are very receptive. They're going to come right back to you and be like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you." Want to strike up a conversation. But in real life, well, that wasn't the case. I was running into people in hotel lobbies and things like that, and they did not appear that they wanted to be talked to very much. So
Shocking. I know is like just how different it is in normal life that Camp FI turns out isn't a microcosm of the world at large. And it really is something unique uh, in us FI people.
mhm.
I guess we are truly the strange ones, right?
You can say that again. Yeah.
Well, and I'm certainly one that doesn't struggle with striking up a conversation most of the time and talking to other people, but I think for myself, I know one of the challenges that I have is just by and large is having FOMO and realizing that it's okay to go to sleep and miss out on conversations. I'll call it was Elliot good over this campfire that most of the time I was in bed by no later than midnight. So that's pretty good for a campfire for me, given historical record.
But you did mention that the crowd had pretty much thinned out to nothing. So you didn't have anybody to stay up that late with.
I will say by night three there were still people up and I did actually yes, go to bed earlier. But yes, night one and two, I still was one of the lone standing soldiers. I mean, certainly with it being a week 1.5 that it was during the week, I don't know about you, but I certainly felt like it was a different vibe as far as just the attendees. It tended to be more actual retirees, people further down the path. So I I think certainly in I mean, I won't speak for you, but for myself, like as somebody that is approaching impending retirement in just a couple of months here, that was very enlightening because you're around other people that are facing similar, I don't know, struggles probably not the right word, but similar situations as myself, or seeing other people that have, you know, are 5, 10 years down the line from me and being able to learn from them. So I found that very insightful in this particular campfire.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It's a bit like the experienced veterans that have been there before and doing been along the journey for a matter of years, like you said, that were some of the conversations just went directly to that. Like, this is what we have experienced. These are the things that we have done. These are the maybe some of the mistakes that we've made or things that we want to make sure that we impart on folks that are kind of coming along on the journey or maybe new to early retirement. And for me, that was very helpful to be a fly on the wall in some of those conversations and just really hear like what they have been experiencing. And I guess from like kind of an outsider's perspective looking in, or maybe just not even being that close to their circumstances, as some of the individuals that were in the group are pretty, I would say, a little bit more well known in the community. I was seeing their lifestyle as it is now and thinking like, man, like they're living it up. Like I almost can't believe like how much travel and just experiences they have been on in recent history. But as it sounded like with a lot of them, it took like almost a decade for them to kind of reach this point because they were still living in the same kind of budget constraints or spending kind of category as they were leading up to early retirement and hadn't really given themselves the permission to spend more on things. And of course, they all have admitted that it's been a remarkable bull market for the last, what, 15 years or so. So with that gain that they've definitely outpaced their withdrawal rate. And in a lot of cases, they have other streams of income that have come in from various adventures or things that they have done that has helped to avoid needing to draw down more than what they had even projected to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think one of the most or greatest areas of learning for me personally was during the breakout session just on drawdown strategies and just kind of being able to ask, like you said, some of these grizzled vets, so to speak, in the FI community about everybody's big scary, right, is sequence of returns risk and asking them how have they really adapted their lives. So talking to some people have said, yeah, to your point, hey, I you're supposed to do a cost of living adjustment every year by the strict 4% rule, right? Um and some people were like, yeah, we just didn't do that for 5 plus years. And so to that point, that's a great way to limit the potential that a poor sequence of returns risk is going to negatively impact you. But yeah, to your point is then you've got almost a different problem on the other side. It's a good problem to have, obviously, is coupled with the strong market returns is now you've got so much money that you just need to spend. Otherwise, Mr. Sebesta would say it's going to go to the hogs. It's going to go to your money's going to go to your heirs, organization, or government if you don't spend it appropriately. So, good problem to have, and obviously there's new businesses that are flourishing because of that. So, like our good friend Kristen with Five Friends Travel, Amberly Grant was one of the speakers. Her FinTalks cruises. You're seeing so many of these things that are catering to a very specific niche, but obviously there's strong demand for it. So kudos to them.
Yeah. I was gonna mention that I don't know why that, but over the last couple of days, I think I was just driving or I was doing something and sort of reflecting on some of the conversation and maybe some of the own my own thoughts that have been kind of associated with Camp Fi and listening to some of these folks talk about what they've gone through in the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years or so. And it's funny how we get to this, we in the Fi community have been relatively intentional with our saving and then our spending in order to get to this point. And in contrast, there's of course a certain portion of the population that is like, you know, they're busy, they're working full time, they're spending, not saving nearly as much, not even really focused on any kind of early retirement or aspirations like that. And then there's probably, and you probably have some in your life, and I know I have some in my life that here we sit, you're on the cusp of early retirement. I'm a year plus into it, and we're still being very intentional. We're thinking through a lot of these things, and we're trying to be as mindful as we can be with the balance of spending versus saving versus making sure that we don't run out of money and all of that. And then I know that there's people in my family that are very much fly by the seat of their pants, not necessarily concerned about having any kind of savings or sometimes maybe not even consistent work or consistent income. And they figure it out. And I mean, sure, it could be certainly potentially stressful for them, but it's it's interesting. I don't know if you think about it, like we're spending so much time thinking about it, talking about it, and all that when we should have as we should be a lot more carefree about it, in my opinion. But because we probably all have some sort of a similarity in mindset, we're continuously just trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time, as opposed to just kind of like, eh, just let life
Yeah,
happen
it'll
to
all
us.
just work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, certainly when we talk about, I mean, that's certainly one of my biggest concerns, right? Is being 39 years old and getting ready to walk away from what what has been referred to me as a large shovel that's adding money to the pile. I mean, it's a scary thing, right? Are we doing the right thing for ourselves and our families and the time horizon piece of yeah, hey, people like to run studies on 30 years, but my time horizon hopefully is longer than that. So talking 40, 50 plus years, depending on how medical enhancements go by that time. It's kind of crazy to think that way, but I mean, I had grandparents that were near that age that have passed, so that's not out of the realm of possibility. So, and also the fact that we know once we step away from work, like you said, you're in the best condition probably of your life, or for at least recent memory, right? And so when you don't have the stress of paid work that you have to be worrying about, you can focus on the things that are important, like your health, and whether that's physical health, your mental health, all the things.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a very common theme in the community too. Again, with the veterans that were there, and it seems like definitely community is a big factor in happiness. I mean, that's something that I've come to really appreciate more in recent months, I would say. And just kind of hearing from them, like they're talking about, this is my family now. I think it was mentioned a couple of different times, and that, like, it kind of took me a minute to really fully embrace that, because I'd been a part of this community for many years, but really like the in-person part of it for only the last couple. And as they were kind of talking about it, it was almost as if like I had a bit of an awakening, where I was like, yeah, you can't pick your family, but you can certainly pick your friends. We've all heard that line before, but being a part of this community, I was thinking about it just the other day. Like, there's so many of you that if I was in some sort of a need, I could reach out and you'd all be available to help or support, answer questions, whatever the case might be. But going back to the physical health of it as well, a lot of the folks that really have that like mindset of, let's try to stay as healthy as we can, kind of like improve our lifespan, our health span, and all of those sorts of things. You kind of can see it. You can see it in the activities that they pursue. You can see it in the conversations that they have and the way that they carry themselves. And it's really good to see that, because there's certainly studies on the opposite end of that, where people retire and then they decline very rapidly. Typically, it's more of the traditional retirement age, I think, but they're not nearly as physically healthy, and they're not as mentally healthy, because they no longer have community and friends and those types of things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like it's very evident in even my day to day. You and my buddy Douglas almost get a phone call every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday when I'm commuting home from the office. Is like, yeah, I could sit here and listen to another podcast, or I could listen to some music, or I can cultivate the relationships that I care about in my life, and people that, like, not to say that I only care about you two and I don't care about anybody else. It is just, hey, who's available to actually have a phone conversation at noon on a Tuesday? That that population or community shrinks pretty drastically. So I know maybe it's welcomed or unwelcomed by you sometimes when you're in the middle of construction projects, but it's a good way to break up the day, I'm sure. And yeah, and I know Buddy Douglas and I mean, we just seem to continue to just talk through how's your life really going, and having those deeper conversations that honestly, that like you just don't have with outside of your spouse and closest friends. I mean, and even some of my closest friends, you don't have those same conversations. So it really is just a unique community.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was feeling a little bit discouraged with just my friendships. Not that I was discouraged with my friends per se, but I felt like, to your point of having people available, everybody's in a different circumstance with life. So some of my friends were still in the child raising years. Lori and I were a little further along, so we didn't have the same constraints. And it was getting to the point where I felt like we were both struggling with just having friends because everybody was busy and that sort of thing. And it was about that time whenever I really said, I'm going to put myself out there and join this community. And I think that's whenever I told Lori, let's try this economy thing and see what it's like and try to meet some like-minded people, make some new friends and that sort of thing. And they say that especially guys our age, you're younger than me, of course, but just as we're older, like middle-aged, I guess, sort of, and it becomes, they say it's really hard, especially for men, to make friends and to meet new people and to have those deeper relationships. And I know that was the case for me prior to putting myself out there and joining the FI community. And now it's like it's I have more people that I have made friendships with and come into contact with, and some of them aren't necessarily as deep. There's only maybe a handful that are, but it's just really nice to be like I'm so far removed from that version of myself just from a few years ago where I was struggling to make new friends or have other relationships in my life outside of family and the couple, two or three friends that I still had fairly frequent conversations with. And yeah, it's been a very significant change in a short matter of time.
And I think that's a perfect segue for even within this context of this Camp FI. I would say that you and I got pretty close with um, a couple from Wichita, Katie and Gary, and it, it it's crazy that just out of, a random, what, 3 or 4 day event that you strike up a conversation and you just kind of build that relationship. I know that Katie was struggling with the thought of when she was going to retire from full-time work, and even from that time until the day that we're recording, she actually had her last day yesterday. So that's pretty exciting. And I mean, not to say that we had some great impact on that, but I think that at least we were able to form a relationship with people that we didn't know previously, and hopefully make some small impact that allows their family to have that much greater connection back with their kids or whatever they are most passionate about, to that mindset to say, yeah, hey, you've got the money problem solved, and now it's time to go do whatever you want.
You don't give us enough credit, Elliot. I think we had a huge impact on her making that decision.
I don't know about that, but I will send many a memes your way that will tell you it's time to quit. If that is your need, you hit me up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't have any problem telling people that that's the direction that they need to head in. And some that are closest to me have not taken my advice yet, but others,
Maybe one day that specific person will start getting my meme treatment as well.
oh,
But
that's a good idea.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
just random Mondays, I'll send out the meme
Yeah.
treatment.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun to hang out with and get to know and spend time with. And we did the labyrinth behind the campfire location a couple of times with them, which was kind of surreal. It was a interesting experience to go around. I'm using that word right, right? Labyrinth. That was the,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah.
As I said it, I was like, that maybe that's not what that thing is called, but yeah, we did that and just walked around in semicircles for 20 minutes or whatever it took us.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was a good time, and of course the nice backdrop of the mountains, and yeah, it's very peaceful.
Yeah. Another highlight of mine from camp this time was that I played pickleball for the first time ever. I had never played. I have hit a tennis ball back and forth. Lori and I have done that quite a bit in the past, but pickleball, I can see that that is definitely something that's more approachable for folks, and I know it's been around, it's like huge now, and it's been around for many, many years. You said you actually started in high school playing that a little bit, but for whatever reason, we had never done it, and it was really cool. It felt, I think this time around for me, it felt more like summer camp in general than it has in some of the other ones. And they all have their own, all the camps, all the locations have their own set of activities that you can pursue. But this one, I did some hiking and played pickleball. It just felt like it was just some like a real summer camp experience. And that pickleball was a lot of fun. I definitely want to get back to that. Haven't done it yet, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Hopefully my foot will be in good enough shape that I'll be able to be your pickleball partner at some point here. But
I hope so. How's that
yeah,
going for you? How's the rehab going?
it's good. I'm going back to see my surgeon here the first week of August. So I'm continuing my physical therapy, making some progression. We are doing at least some agility work. So, I mean, it's starting to feel like hopefully maybe I'll be making more positive strides here pretty quick. And I've committed to being my daughter's assistant soccer coach as well in the fall here. So we have a neighbor that's the head coach, and we had what I'll call is the great schism between rec league soccer and club soccer. So we had basically half the team leave to go start playing club soccer already at the second grade level. I mean, we were invited to go, but decided that that didn't seem like the right move for our family, and um, so stepping it up to assistant coach in good old rec league.
Well, I applaud both decisions, both in staying at the rec league and then in coaching. That'll be a lot of fun, and definitely I as someone who went through the rec for on baseball, went from rec league to the club team or select team as they called it back then at an early age. I think my son Eli was 8. It was a fun experience, but it was definitely a lot more aggressive than he was ready for at his age, I think. And a couple of years later, had the opportunity to step back into a rec league situation, and I remember he had a blast. It was like probably the highlight of seasons for him that he was able to just really have fun, and it was a lot less pressure. And yeah, it was a better overall situation. And then things kind of went from there, and he kind of went back into a select team, but it was a lot less aggressive, and just got to find the right kind of situation for personality type. But man, it's just crazy these days how quickly that and how young of an age those select teams start.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably have a whole conversation just on that topic alone is on yeah, I mean it really is. It's like keeping up with the
Hmm.
Joneses Kid Edition is exactly how it is for parents is you feel like or you're in many ways made to feel like a bad parent if you're not going to those select teams of like, oh, how do like you're not giving your kid the best opportunity and everything else along with it. And if she wanted to do it, I'm sure we probably would have. But yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
It's madness. I just had one final point there. I remember this, and this was like probably almost 15 years ago now that we joined that select team, and then we had tournaments that were just like every other weekend or something. It was pretty frequent, and we're traveling further a lot further distances than what we were used to for the rec leagues. And I just remember these guys that were hosting these tournaments, these different companies that were coming out, and they had these big elaborate like tents and all of those types of things set up, trophies, the whole 9 yards. But they, you could just tell it was like big business. It went from like, we're here to give the kids something to do. Let's all have fun. Let's have a good experience. teaching them and all of that sort of thing to these guys are doing pretty well over here because they're getting a lot of our money.
Right.
And that didn't sit well with me.
Yeah. And I will say one final point and then we can move off this. But actually the exit of the US men's soccer team from the World Cup, I read an article on talking about really why the US struggles so much and really pointed to the big business of youth sports
Mm.
and development, player development. Yeah, it's just crazy that I mean the US is so just focused on, how can I turn this into a profitable venture as opposed to maybe what's the best outcome that I'm trying to set up for. So,
Hmm. That's interesting. So it's because we're putting so much emphasis on the business side of it that we're not necessarily doing a great job at developing those athletes. Well,
right, yeah, because as opposed to, let's say, other nations, they're just very excited about whether they have a player that comes from their hometown or something like that. And so would be doing everything to develop somebody of that caliber, and it's not about the money. I mean, that person will go off and make oodles of money if they ever become that level of talent. And you'll see this in some of, especially, I'm sure athletes just in general, but specifically like soccer players. Maybe this is just because I follow soccer more than anything else. How they're making millions of dollars and they're flooding all of that money back into their communities and building schools and hospitals and all of these things that, like, I mean, that's just really cool to see.
yeah, yeah,
So
very
anyway,
cool.
back to camp.
Yeah. So what do you have any key takeaways in addition to what we've already talked about, or any cons, anything like that? Is there any like things that you would have liked to have done differently, or anything that you wish that would have been better overall?
Oh, that's a very loaded question. Yeah. So how about I'll start with, the key takeaways. So, I mean, as far as camps kind of go, I generally say that the reason that I go to camp is to build relationships. It's not generally the content because I've listened to thousands of hours of content and read and generate content with you and everything else, right? However, I will say that there was a slight different bend to the content this year that I hadn't really heard described in other kind of larger phi community events. Was it seemed to focus more on, I think the way it was described was emotional health, right? And I'm going to curse for a minute, so if you have small children, earmuffs. But the running title of one was "Go the fuck to therapy." So it, ironically enough, like I think I talked about on a previous episode, is that I recently went back to therapy myself, and how doing, like, after you have solved different problems in your life, like a money problem, like Phi really is doing, it allows you to focus on those other things. So, like we said, whether I think the community has done a good job at talking about, okay, now we got to focus on our physical health. I felt like there were two specific sessions of the four kind of quote unquote main stage speakers that really spoke more to mental well-being, mental health, emotional health, whatever you want to call it. And I think, they did a great job at kind of highlighting that inner work that we have to do, whether it's going to a therapist or not. But I think that's just another facet of how do we live a happier life and be a better human.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was a highlight for me as well. I think that's something that you and I have talked about quite a bit here. And I spoke about that to you a couple of episodes ago as something that just struggling with happiness in general and having those down periods of where things are getting a little tougher or stressful or whatever. And then I get a little bit deeper, not to necessarily to a depressive state, but just feeling a little bit bummed out and just trying to make sure that I'm aware of that. And like you said, it's having those conversations about making sure that people are aware that therapy is okay and it's not shouldn't be like stigmatized and should be focusing on all aspects of our health, not just physical.
Yeah, exactly. And ChatGPT came in with the picture worth a thousand words, I think, of camp was one of the speakers talked about their love of kittens. And so one of the pictures in the presentation was this very swole cat bench pressing huge amounts of weight and saying, yeah, we've gotten good at talking about this part, but maybe not this other one.
Hmm.
So that one will ring true in my mind. But as far as cons, I mean, I didn't really have too many cons per se. I know that one of the topics was on cryptocurrency, and I think that that one was going to be contentious in this community just in general. I think the like obviously everybody's going to have their own opinion on crypto. I think that the technology is very cool. I think there are some problems that it solves. The way that people are using it right now, where it is just speculating, for lack of a better term, like, yeah, that's gonna fall on deaf ears in this group by and large. And the other piece of it that I know that I struggle with is the resources that it kind of uses. I know that the speaker did speak to that a little bit as well. So, but yeah, when you're talking about maybe a traditional unbanked community and efficient ways to move money around, yeah, potentially there is some utility there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if either one of us was going to bring that topic up or not. I was going to refrain from that one, but yeah, I mean, I did listen in as you did, and I think it was better than I anticipated, the overall conversation, but it's definitely something that I have no interest in whatsoever and feel very similarly as you do.
Yeah, I will say that personally, I've gotten somewhat burned out on case studies. Like even in our local chapter, I think I've missed the last two. That's not to say that I won't go to any case studies. It's just I think I've had too much of a good thing that I had to take a step back. So I know that I skipped out on that and just had some conversations instead, and I was okay with that. Just the same way like how you said that you needed some time to just recharge. I think knowing yourself and what really works for you is it's it's all a choose your own adventure, right?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of my key takeaways. These were items that I felt like were specific to the content and or conversations that I had that were more in the finance area. So in the conversation that you had mentioned earlier that we talked through where we were kind of in the breakout session with a lot of the veterans, there was a lot of talk about how they had all worked with the CFP, and it was very refreshing to hear them all discuss that because I think there's a lot of emphasis on DIY. And when it comes to your withdrawal strategy and tax optimization and all of those sorts of things. So hearing that they have all had, or the majority of them have had a second set of eyes to vet their assumptions or make recommendations was really helpful for me. So I haven't done it yet, but it's one of my action items that I do want to set up some time with an advisor, a fee only advisor that we can just talk through and go, here's where we currently stand. How would you optimize it? What watch outs do we have? All of those sorts of things. And then another one for me was cleaning up our credit cards. That's something that came up a couple of different times in conversation. I don't know that in the long term that we're going to be ever reach the level of expert or even experienced credit card hackers. I'm happy to just get our Southwest Companion Pass and perhaps earn enough points here and there that can offset a lot of our flights. But really beyond that, it's there's just so much maintenance, I feel like, on our end, so much to the point where I know that we've opened up a ton of credit cards and we haven't gone back to do the maintenance of closing them out. So we're just paying those annual fees quite frequently. So that's an action item that I have, is just really at this point, I just want to start closing some of these cards because we're not using them. And then
Yep.
another one that I had was just making a small, unnecessary, intentional purchase on testing our spending. And that's something that we started out one of those conversations going around the room, and the question was, what have you spent on that's out of the ordinary? And I didn't have a great example. And I was only like the third person that answered the question. So I was a little bit just like in the hot seat, I felt like, and I mentioned the travel, which is something that we definitely have spent a lot more on and will spend more on this year. But as far as a lot of people had interesting gadgets and things that make their life a little bit easier, I couldn't come up with an example off the top of my head. Although I did recall afterwards that I spent money on this laptop that I'm recording on here, which was quite pricey. Did that a couple months ago, but there's things that I always look at as a better quality, and they don't cost that much, like a better watch or a better bike. Or even at this past week, I've been talking about and looking at getting a kayak, and those are just like very small in the grand scheme of things purchases that I need to practice a little bit.
Yeah, I'll echo many of your same sentiments there as far as takeaways also. Yeah, hearing that many people who I would consider very well versed in all things fire, yeah, leveraging some sort of retirement planner. I don't know if it was necessarily a CFP, but yeah, some professional to assess their plan and vet their assertions, I think is well worth the money, is what everybody was saying. As far as it's funny you bring up the credit cards and cleaning those up. We're basically at the same point. Is we've done, the whole Chase Gauntlet, we've done Southwest Companion Pass. We're pretty good about, for the most part, not getting dinged on annual fees and closing out cards and things of that nature. But yeah, some banks have changed kind of some of their policies and things of that nature. Yeah, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze for us in all cases, or especially in this phase of life that we're in. We're not leveraging it enough for us to go through kind of that small amount of friction. And another major takeaway or something that I wanted to focus on was 72 T's while we were up there. So shout outs to Darren and Jolene, because they certainly were very kind with their time and discussions of just laying out how they're using 72 T's in their life and the mechanics, and just, yeah, willing to answer any question that I had.
Yeah, I agree. Same here. They talked to us one morning for quite some time and explained their strategy and answered some of our questions. And it again gave me more confidence, I would say, just being able to talk to people that have been through it and hearing like how they set things up and the process and things like that is certainly very helpful. There's a lot of folks in the community that are like that. I mean, they go into these campfires and any other meetups, there's so much experience out there as you get to talking to people that you can really bounce ideas off of and have questions. And so many people are generous with their time to be able to just say, yeah, this is what worked for us. Watch out for this. We may have an issue over here, over there, whatever it might be. And yeah, very, very helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
I did have a couple of, I guess, very trivial cons that come to mind, and maybe some of them, they're definitely more specific to me than I would say as the event overall. So one was that being in the Rocky Mountains, this this particular event space does not have air conditioning in the rooms that we stay in. And so they encourage you to close the windows during the day and open them at night to let the cool air in. And while the temperatures do drop in the evenings and overnight, it didn't seem like, I think we were in a pretty warm I guess the temperature overall was a little warmer in that time of July than maybe it typically is, but it didn't cool off to my liking in the evening. So I slept like crap most of the nights and struggled with that. Again, certainly not an issue with the event, but more so for with the accommodations there. And I'm just a hot sleeper as it is, so I struggled with that. And then beyond that, it's just, I would say, even going back to the very beginning of our conversation here, how I was really trying to put myself out there and really make sure that I tried to engage with different people. It's just not enough time, really, to really make sure that you have meaningful conversations with everyone. It's really hard. It's like 60 something people or 70 people, something like that. And it was funny because the last day that we were there that morning, and there was a bunch of us out on the patio and we were talking, and David Boyer, who's Steven's brother, we kind of bumped into each other, and he's like, "Hey, I hadn't even talked to you all weekend." He's like, "I see you over here, over there, and you've been talking to people, but we didn't." And I had met him in the past. We were both at Camp Fi a couple of years ago at that event, and we had talked quite a bit. In fact, to the point where we kind of exchanged some texts afterwards and things like that. So even the people that you have met before, or at least for me, I didn't get a chance to say hi to again or have very much conversation with. And I mean, trying not to beat myself up over that, but it's you, like we mentioned with Gary and Katie, you connect with somebody and you tend to start building that friendship, and it goes a little bit deeper than it might with others, and you spend more time with them, and then you're not able to spend as much time with other people. And that's just kind of like how it goes with these events when you only have just a couple days.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was one of the talking points in Amberly's conversation too, was it's okay that you're not going to talk to everybody. Like, you just got to give yourself the grace to understand that you can't build deep connections with everybody in 3 days, right? It
Mhm.
just doesn't work. So, yep. I'm with you. There are definitely people that I didn't really get to talk to, you know, probably at all. I know there are some people that I didn't talk to until the last couple of hours, and I had some really deep conversations throughout that experience as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just funny how it works that way, but it's hard to you can't be everywhere at once and having all the conversations.
Yeah, and I totally forgot that that was part of Amberly's talk there, but as you mentioned that, it totally reminded me of that. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is sort of an opportunity, a reminder to give yourself that grace that even though you tried to put yourself out there, you really, as humans, we don't have that capability to really go super deep with so many different people, because it's just what they say, like maybe 150 people is what you have the capability of doing that with, studies have shown.
Yeah, I mean, so that's what a big chunk of Amberly's presentation was on, was yeah, those those I forget what it was called, but it was like basically the different circles, that how many people you can be really, really close friends with, and then how many people you can be maybe slightly deeper friends, like a wider group from there. And then yeah, the widest circle. I think, there were conflicting studies, but I think at most it was like 300 capped out, but it was probably closer to 150, is really how many relationships you can actively maintain at any given time.
That sounds like a lot. 150 sounds like a lot. I think, going back to the top of the conversation and some of the research that I did, I would say that I used to always call myself an introvert. And I think that's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. As I read through it, it says how they recharge, they need time alone in quiet environments to restore their energy. That's true. Style is that they often enjoy deep one-on-one conversations rather than large crowds. That's also true. Being in highly stimulated environments for too long can feel draining. Misconception is that introversion is not the same as shyness or antisocial behavior. I would say that's partly true for me. But as I read through I'm definitely not on the extrovert side of things. But
Yeah, I was gonna say I can walk through the extrovert little
yeah,
bit. I mean, yeah, I definitely lean more on the extroverted side. I'm not sure that I ever call myself a straight extrovert or not, but it says like how they recharge is gaining energy and feeling stimulated by being around other people. That's certainly true for me. Social style, thrive in active social environments. Yep, they are often outgoing and prefer talking through problems or ideas with others. Check and check. But then the misconception is that extroversion does not mean that somebody is constantly talking or lacks the ability to be alone, though prolonged solitude is rarely their preference. Which, yeah, I would say I don't have problems being alone either.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I cut you off before. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I learned more about the omnivert and ambivert categories, and I would say that, and I'll just kind of quickly mention the differences here, is that omniverts, well, it says while an ambivert sits in the middle and finds a comfortable balance, an omnivert experiences the stark extremes of both ends of the spectrum. I feel like I'm more in that camp than I would be in the ambivert, which ambivert, they say that they act as a social chameleon, often understanding both introverts and extroverts well and bridging the gap between them. And I don't think that I'm in that camp, so to speak, because I don't think I have the ability to go in and go, oh, hey, extrovert, yeah, let's bring you into the fold and kind of bridge the gap between the outgoing and the quieter type. So I because I am more on the quieter type side. So, but definitely the omnivert, it says how they recharge their energy needs to fluctuate, and meaning they sometimes need to hide away completely while other times they can crave constant social stimulation. I don't know that I crave constant, but I definitely crave some form of it. In that, even just like this week, as we had our own brewery hang for our local Choosify chapter, I was like looking forward to talking to some folks and just kind of getting back because I haven't had a whole lot of conversation outside of just family stuff in the last, well, since Camp Fi, which was several weeks ago now.
Yeah, as far as the omnivert and ambivert descriptions too, like I do feel like I do have some of that social chameleon in me and try and pull people out of their bubble a little bit and say, hey, what's going on? So that one kind of lands for me, I think, more than any of the others. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I can see you that in that one for sure. But the as the research goes on, there's definitely overlap and blending with all of these, and there's even some special categorizations that are even different layers below each of these. These are just all very high level.
Yeah, exactly. Did you want to speak to your little trip afterwards?
Yeah, I'll just summarize it really quick here, and going back again to our credit card hacking and just how we talked about like making sure that I want to make sure that we are doing our best to kind of clean up some of that stuff because as life evolves and things change, you have different seasons where you may appreciate conveniences of being able to fly everywhere and have all those points available. I took this very long road trip, which I enjoyed tremendously being on the road. I didn't really know how I was going to feel about it. I drove over 4,000 miles as I went from Missouri through Kansas up through Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and eventually Montana, and then took the southeast route back where I went through South Dakota, Iowa, and saw a lot of the country, and it was a lot of fun. It was nice to not have to feel rushed, where it's like get on a plane, try to get there, do as much as I can, and then fly home. And took my time, went through, like I mentioned, eight different states, stayed in eight different locations over 14 nights, and did a lot of hiking, biking, rafting. Met up with my son in Montana where he's a raft guide just outside of Glacier National Park. Did some whitewater rafting as well as a scenic raft ride. It was beautiful, gorgeous part of the country up there. And Western Wyoming is gorgeous as well. I will tell everybody that I talk to about Western Wyoming because I don't think Wyoming gets enough credit. And you often hear about Colorado, Montana, even Utah as some beautiful parts of the country, but Wyoming doesn't get mentioned too much. And that's generally because it's such a very sparsely populated state. But if you stay on the western side near the mountains, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And then as the trip wound down, I was actually considering taking a long drive back where I was going to stop many times and stay like in multiple locations. But I ended up just cannonballing at home and drove the entire 25-hour trip over the course of 2 days and just stayed the night in a hotel somewhere in the middle of South Dakota and long enough to get like 6 hours of sleep and take a shower and got up and drove the rest of the way home. Kind of because I was a little bit homesick, but my truck did we've talked so much about on this podcast is it's a 2012 Chevy Colorado with nearly 200,000 miles on it. I did a bunch of preventative maintenance before I went, and about halfway through the trip, my check engine light came on. And I was like, what the heck? I was not experiencing any mechanical issues. It was running fine. I was getting actually really good gas mileage. I took it to an O'Reilly Auto Parts. They did a scan and said that my catalytic converter was dirty, and they gave me a cleaner to run through it, or sold me a cleaner to run through it that was expensive. It was like $28 for just a fuel injector cleaner stuff. Ran that through, and the check engine light stayed on the rest of the trip. Did not have any issues with how it was running. Got all the way back home, still had the check engine light on. And then my truck sat for a couple of days after I got back, and I went out to start it one day. Battery was dead. So I guess I completely drained the battery on the trip. Now it was 7 or 8 years old, my battery. Went to AutoZone to have them check it. They're like, yeah, your battery's dead. Here's a new battery. Since then, my check engine light has not come back on. So I don't know.
They didn't want to sell you a battery and instead just was like, $28 of catalytic converter fluid, huh?
I don't know. Yeah, it's like it seemed like the two things are probably not connected, but at the same time, I don't know if maybe they were. So anyway, maybe it gave a
seems
bad
strange.
code. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it gave a bad code or something.
it handled well on the trip, and it was a really fun experience. And one other thing that I think could be a future discussion that we have is I've mentioned this in the past is I'm kind of drafting what I'm calling a wonderful life policy statement. And I spent some time on that as I had a lot of time to myself, a lot of quiet time, and just kind of outlining these are the things, just going back to the intentionality part of things. But if I could get all of these things in my head written out into like a 1-page paper of like, these are the things that I need to focus on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that's going to make my life as good as it can be for the values that I have and the way that I want to live. I should be hitting on all cylinders enough that it's maintaining that level of happiness that I think we all aspire to have. And then anytime I get a little bit discouraged or down, I can reflect on that and go, hey, dummy, like this is how great your life is. You're doing all these things. Let's not go down that path of getting bummed out because maybe one or two things is stressing me out at the moment. So more to come on that.
Now that I'll be excited to hear all about that.
Yeah, I'll share it in great detail in a future conversation.
Any last things before we wrap here?
I don't think so. We went way long on this one, Elliot, before we hit record.
I told you we would. Yeah, I had a feeling that this one was going to go a little long, but if you enjoyed the show, we kindly ask that you give us a thumbs up either on YouTube or a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on your preferred podcast platform, and share it with your friends. We don't PR this very much, but we did. I will say that we had a few more people kind of reach out, or when we've said mentioned podcasting. People asked about it, so maybe we have some new listeners here. So we welcome your feedback, whether it's positive, negative, whichever you leave, or you're listening or watching to us, or you can send us an email. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Yep.
Thanks so much,
Very good.
and we'll see you on the next one.
Yep. See you, Elliot.
See you, Josh.